We have three members of the team currently here. I'll go first. My name is Yusuf Abdul Karim. I'm the Human Rights and Equity Advisor. And on the agenda today, we would, after the introductions, we would review the Ontario Human Rights Code, and then also go into some of the work that we've been doing in Limestone, as well as highlighting additional resources. Ray, can you go to the next slide, please? Yes, thank you. So, as I said before, my name is Yusuf. I'm the Human Rights and Equity Advisor, and just briefly explaining sort of my role and what I do. Um, it's sort of, I guess, encompasses the entire board. So, in a nutshell, it's pretty much to ensure that the board in the services we provide to students, and also as an employer, we're following the Ontario Human Rights Code. And so, some of my job responsibilities includes building and maintaining a culture of respect for human rights throughout the board, identifying and addressing systemic barriers for students and staff. I also coordinate and facilitate learning events and sessions for students and staff. I also oversee and monitor the board's human rights complaints procedures. And sometimes involved in investigations and supporting school administrators in doing investigations. And I also provide confidential and impartial information to every member of the Limestone community. I'll pass it on to Andrea to well, Ray, whichever one.
All right, I can jump in. So Ray and myself are both equity and inclusion consultants. Ray McDonald covers off from grades K to 8, and then we overlap where I go 7 to 12. Our key areas of responsibility include providing instructional and coaching support in classrooms in response to issues of human rights, equity, and inclusion. We work collaboratively with elementary and secondary staff and schools to support capacity building through professional learning, coordinating and facilitating staff and/or events. And we build educator awareness and promotion of positive learning environments that support equity and inclusion that are culturally responsive and relevant for students. And the next slide is our superintendent, who I believe just was able to join us. So perfect timing, Ali. If you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
That was perfect timing. Good evening, everyone. My name is Allison McDonald, and I am a superintendent of education, curriculum and program services with the Limestone District School Board. And the two pieces of my portfolio, as you can see, predominant pieces of my portfolio, as you can see from the title, are early years and equity and inclusion. I also have responsibilities for a number of other items, including supervision of family of schools, which includes NDSS and the LaSalle family of schools. I have the great honor and privilege of being the supervisor of the LDSB Human Rights and Equity team, who I believe you have just met a few moments ago, and overall responsibility for the LDSB Equity Action Plan, which is a public-facing document that documents all of the work that is happening in Limestone as it relates to equity, inclusion, and human rights. And I also have responsibilities for the large-scale student census collection, which happened back in 2020. And you will be seeing some additional information coming out shortly as it relates to the next piece of student census, which will be Student Census 2025. So Yusuf, I think I'm going to turn it back over to you now.
Thank you, Ali. And just as an overview of sort of focus of the Human Rights and Equity team, of course, is to ensure that the school board is always following the Ontario Human Rights Code, which is the human rights law in Ontario. And under the Ontario Human Rights Code, we have 17 grounds of discrimination, as you will see on the screen right now. Of course, most of this or all of that does apply to limestone. As part of work as well in educating students and staff and the entire limestone community, we also created a human rights video that explains further some of what these Ontario human rights grounds are, as well as um, highlighting the human rights complaints process in LDSB. So the video serves two purposes. The first thing is it explains and talks about what human rights are and how that applies to everybody. And then the other part of the video is explaining what a student should do if they've experienced any form of discrimination in our board. So Ray, if you can go to the next slide and play the video.
Please let me know if you can hear sound. I just adjusted our settings.
What are human rights?
Human rights are rights that are fundamental to our existence as human beings. They are supreme, legally protected, and apply to all individuals and groups.
Examples of human rights include the right to an education, the right to privacy, freedom of thought and religion, the right to work, and the right to rest and leisure.
Human rights in Ontario.
The Human Rights Code is the law that protects the rights of all people and groups of Ontario. It recognizes that all people have human rights that cannot be infringed upon or dismissed, have individual dignity and worth,
Are entitled to equal rights and opportunities without discrimination. The Code provides protection from discrimination on the following grounds:
Age, ancestry, color, race,
Citizenship, discrimination because of association, ethnic origin, place of origin,
creed, disability, family status, marital status, including single status, gender identity and gender expression,
reprisal, sex including pregnancy and breastfeeding, and sexual orientation.
Discrimination occurs when any of the above grounds have been violated.
Here's an example of a human rights violation. Farida is a new student in your class who just arrived from Somalia. She is Muslim and wears a hijab. She is also black.
Frank and Giselle are in Farida's class. They have called Farida the N-word on multiple occasions and made fun of her hijab. They told Farida that if she reported them to a teacher, they would tell everyone she was a snitch and they would wait for her outside school.
Farida's human rights have been violated because she has been discriminated against on the basis of her race and religion.
She has also been threatened to be harmed if she makes a report. This is called reprisal and is also a violation of the Ontario Human Rights Code.
What should you do when your rights have been violated or when you have experienced discrimination?
It is important that you speak up when you experience or witness any form of discrimination. This includes incidents that are related to school activities, activities that occur off school property, such as school-related field trips, extracurricular clubs and activities, and sporting events.
It is also important to report if you witness or experience discrimination outside of school hours and/or the school environment that impacts the learning environment for Limestone students. Speak to your teacher, principal, or vice principal or other trusted adult about the incident or complaint, or submit a complaint online using the Student Human Rights Incident and Complaints form. This can be found on your school and the Limestone District School Board websites. There is also a QR link available on the posters up at your school.
The form will allow the board to monitor, track, and respond to human rights incidents and complaints that involve Limestone students in a fair, timely, and consistent manner.
Once a complaint is submitted, it will be sent to the principal or vice principal of the school where the incident happened to investigate. If your complaint involves a principal or vice principal, it will be sent to the Human Rights and Equity Advisor and the superintendent who supervises the school. If you include your contact information when you submit a complaint or incident, you can expect someone to contact you within 2 business days, except on weekends or holidays.
You do not have to submit an incident or complaint alone. You can ask a family member, friend, LDSB employee, community advocate, or a trusted adult for help in submitting the form
And for support at any meetings where we talk about your incident or complaint.
Your information is confidential. Only those who need to be involved in the investigation will see your information.
You can also submit the form anonymously.
If you have any questions or want more information, please contact your school principal or vice principal or the Human Rights and Equity Advisor.
Okay, so I believe I'll jump in here. So that video was shown to students 2 years ago from grades 4 to 12, and some schools are sharing it still again to this day as well. A lot of the work that we do is driven by the results and the information we collect from the Human Rights Reporting Tool in terms of the video that we just saw. And the one thing that we saw coming up over and over again was a high incidence of race-related incidents, specifically around anti-Black racism and the N-word. So last summer, the creation led by Yusuf in terms of the N-word document to try and help and combat it. So it's a lengthy document. It's about 6 pages long. I believe we have another video. If you go to the next slide there, I can't remember which order I put things in, that will sort of summarize the key points here.
Hello. As we recognize and honor Black History and Futures Month, it is important to reflect not only on the accomplishments and contributions of Black individuals and groups throughout history, but also on the ongoing need to advance equity, inclusion, and respect. Black history is part of Canadian history, and specific learning in this area has recently been announced by the province for inclusion in the next curriculum revisions in some subject areas. As part of the Limestone District School Board's commitment to creating environments that are affirming and inclusive, prioritizing mental health, well-being, and sense of belonging for individuals within our schools and broader community, we reject all forms of racism, including slurs and epithets. Slurs and epithets are hurtful words or names used to discriminate. As a result, they cause harm and create unwelcoming environments for students and staff. In addition, they violate the Ontario Human Rights Code. That is why we have developed a document that addresses prohibiting the use of slurs and epithets with a particular focus on the use of the N-word. This document, entitled Prohibiting the Use of the N-word, was developed following consultation with Limestone District School Board racialized students, staff affinity groups, and the Umoja Black community group. While all racial slurs cause harm and impact people, the board recognizes the need to specifically address the use of the N-word and other slurs and epithets that target Black people for several reasons. First, most of the reported incidents of slurs and epithets in the board have been related to anti-Black racism. Second, since being launched in the fall of 2022, almost half of all human rights complaints received through the board's Student Human Rights Incidents and Complaint System were related to anti-Black racism, almost exclusively around the use of the N-word. Third, the Student Sense of Belonging report released in the spring of 2023 showed that students who identify as Black reported the highest levels of being made to feel unwelcome or uncomfortable at their school because of their race, cultural background, or skin color. Fourth, the response to the racial slurs and epithets has been inconsistent, and there is some uncertainty about how staff should respond, particularly in situations where the slur or epithet was used by a Black student. And fifth, there are members of the Black community who have reclaimed the N-word and believe they should be able to use the N-word in our working and learning environment. This new document clearly prohibits the use of the N-word in its unabbreviated form, verbal or written, and any variation of the slur on Limestone District School Board property, including but not limited to Limestone sporting events, competitions, online learning platforms, and events or trips by any member of the Limestone community. This includes any use of the unabbreviated N-word or any variation, regardless of the intent of using it and or how the person who uses it self-identifies. This encompasses quoting another person's use of the word, including from songs and books, or any media that have the unabbreviated word. You can find the full document on the Limestone District School Board website. All staff, students, and families play a role in fostering a culture of respect, empathy, and understanding in Limestone schools. The Limestone District School Board recognizes the gravity of slurs and epithets, particularly the N-word, which holds a deeply rooted history of oppression and racism. By addressing the use of such language, we aim to create safer learning and working spaces for all students and staff. Thank you.
So that video last fall, when we released the N-word document, was shown again to all grade 4 to 12 students in their classrooms. And at the same time, we released this document here, this poster, that should be visible in most of our classrooms now. So as a student, can I use the N-word at school? And I refer to this as all roads lead to no, especially within the Limestone District School Board. So if you take a look on the one side, there's different reasons or different questions about why or wanting to use the word. And then on the right-hand side, it gets into a little bit more information. So for example, you think you have a pass to say the word because you have a Black friend. So we know that we have situations where white students are walking around and saying this. In elementary classrooms, sometimes we find that students are given written passes as well. So it's still a hard no. You may not be necessarily a Black identifying student, but a racialized student, you still are not able to use the word. And then, as mentioned in the video, we do recognize that some individuals and families are reclaiming the word and maybe using it with an A to soften the ending and using it as a terms of endearment. And again, that's still not acceptable. So we're looking in terms of like what is acceptable within the school environment, and any time in terms of actually saying the word is not acceptable. Other examples on the left-hand side is playing or repeating lyrics of a song that contain any form of the N-word, still a no. Reading from a book. So we do have materials in some classrooms where there will be some language, and students and staff are not to read aloud any of that as well. And then discussing someone else's use of the word. So we're really trying to educate our students and our staff in terms of the history of the word and the harm that it causes when it's brought into the space as to why that we're not accepting this within our school board. If you go to the next slide, we have a similar graphic for teachers as well that are up in staff areas. So again, you'll see some of the same things in terms of using it because you're racialized, you've got Black friends, using it as a, softening of the A, still all no's, still even if you're bringing it into the classroom in a read aloud, still a no. So for both of these, it's a no. So the student one would be visible in classroom spaces, and the teacher one for staff would be visible in staff room spaces. If you go to the next one there, I believe this is you, Ray.
Yes, thanks, Andrea. So we wanted to highlight some other things that have been done by the equity team. So, of course, the essential pieces have been the human rights video and education campaign. So we have visited classrooms and provided slide decks, age appropriate, from grade 1 on, talking about human rights and responsibilities, connected to our human rights video, which was, as Andrea stated, shared with grade 4 to 12. We've also released the system-wide guidance on prohibiting the N-word, as Andrea had stated. One thing that we're also really proud of is the Limestone District School Board Resource Selection Guide. So this was shared with all staff and is used not only by staff, but by students as well. And it uses a series of questions to encourage people to really consider what texts are being selected and used in classroom spaces. So we really want to work to ensure that the resources used in our spaces do not promote stereotypes, discriminatory biases, or systemic barriers, but instead work to affirm the students in the spaces and ensure that all students feel welcome and accepted in our learning spaces. So having this as a tool with questions has been really essential because we use it to really build capacity in the process of what resources are being used, and really to have staff and students consider how resources connect to the learning journey of the students within the sites. So through this resource selection process, educators, administrators, and students are encouraged to think about how resources support 3 main areas: centering student needs and interests, culturally responsive pedagogy, and also opportunities to think critically. Now, on the bottom part here of the slide, you'll notice that we have buttons clicking to multiple things. And this is in recognition of equity work being everybody's work and wanting to expand learning opportunities to all people beyond even interested educators and administrators in the Limestone District School Board. So starting in November, we offered sorry, I'm talking about up top here. So starting in November last year, we offered bi-monthly human rights and equity learning sessions that were open to all staff with the option to attend in person or virtually. And each session, as you can see, had a different learning focus, which was timely and responsive to the needs of the community that we serve. So these sessions that we offered the ability to deepen understanding related to a particular topic or provide resources and tools to support the next steps and considerations towards building inclusive spaces. It also was provided as a means to highlight and unpack new and updated policies and procedures. Now, underneath of the other section of pictures, that is new to us, but we've created a SharePoint page that is focused on equity and human rights. And it's also available to all Limestone staff. And it was recently launched as a one-stop access point for all internal human rights and equity related resources, support, and information. So all of these both the little micro learnings and the SharePoint resource bank are available to all Limestone employees, and they are responsive to both the needs of the system and the community. They highlight upcoming events, and everything is shared in a weekly My LDSB update. So that is really exciting because all departments who have the collective responsibility to engage in the human rights and equity work ahead have the opportunity to learn and be involved in cultivating inclusive and supportive spaces in Limestone. I'm really excited to talk about the way we are unpacking human rights and equity in the elementary sphere. So this chart kind of identifies the 4 key principles that we work within. So starting on the orange section of the pie, we are working to affirm identity with guests in schools and arts-based education. So within that realm, we're helping students recognize how personal and social responsibility can be explored through the arts and also connect to global citizenship. By having some amazing guests in the school and arts-based education components, we are providing opportunities for Limestone students to see themselves in their learning, express themselves in their identities, and interpret meaning through sharing of stories, perspectives, and voice. This also avails us the opportunity to cultivate some positive school community relationships by working with diverse, knowledgeable community partners, and also build cultural humility through engagement with arts explorations. On the yellowy side of the pie chart, we are really working to develop equity literacy and understanding through presentations where we actually define and unpack equity related terminology so students have the ability to notice and name the incidents that are around them. So we teach and explore interruption strategies, which also move students from a bystander position to being upstanders standing for human rights. And it really enables students to identify similarities and differences in human experiences, affirming students' own identities, and also helps them to see themselves in relation to the world around them. The blue piece of the pie is recognizing and valuing human rights and citizenship. And we do this by connecting to the Ontario curriculum's citizen education framework. And that helps recognize the need of all learners and helps to develop skills and knowledges and perspectives to become informed, productive, caring, responsible, and active citizens in their own communities and the world, as well as anti-discrimination education, which is embedded within the language curriculum of Ontario curriculum, and it encourages students to think critically about themselves and others in the world around them to promote fairness, healthy relationships, and active responsible citizenship. And we really try to incorporate the focus of learning resources that reflect a broad range of students' interests, backgrounds, cultures, and experiences. We use those frameworks, the citizen education framework, as well as anti-discrimination education in all aspects of the curriculum, which includes supporting creed-based accommodations in the arts and also being responsive to the ever-changing curriculum. For example, we have a resource tool that has been shared with all educators connected to the Holocaust education components that have been added to the grade 6 social studies curriculum. Lastly, we as staff are always engaged in critical thinking and reflective practices. So we do have a program called Decentering White Narratives in Primary Years. It's 6 modules for teachers where they can use their own critical thinking skills and reflect on how they are engaging in the work and reflect on their own biases, work moving into how they present and incorporate text within the classroom. We have the resource text selection guide that all staff and students use, as well as student modules called Being the Change, and they are guided activities for junior and intermediate students to not only deepen their understanding of how individual identities connect to those around them, but also make connections to citizenship education. Andrea?
Great, thank you. I'm going to focus in on the secondary panel. So the first off, one of the main things that I've been doing this school year that started last year, and again, based on the data and information we've collected from the human rights tool, it's been guiding us in terms of just being aware of incidents that are happening when our secondary athletes are playing within CASA sports. So last spring, we did a pilot where I went out and presented to all of the soccer teams that were playing in the secondary panel, and basically a 1-hour session with all of the high schools that we have responsibility within Limestone. And then it was decided from there, from student feedback and from staff and from coaches, that come September that we do the same thing for all of the athletes. So in September, I did about 16 presentations, over 1,000 athletes, and now I'm in the process of doing those presentations again as fall season ends, winter season is starting. So we've got hockey teams, we've got girls volleyball, basketball, badminton. So we have many different sports that are starting. So if students have not attended the session before in the fall, they too are attend this time. So they only need to attend once throughout the school year while they're playing as a student athlete. If you want to go to the next slide. A few other things that I've done in the secondary panel has been a lot of, focusing in terms of affirming the identities and the voices of our students and listening to the students in terms of what they want to see. So one of the things that we are doing and working on is the starting of a Black Students Association. And we were quite fortunate to have Aaliyah Edwards, who is a former Limestone student, Frontenac student, who's now playing in the WNBA. Was in town and met with our students. So we probably had about 35 Black identifying students at the office for a morning for a conversation, a very informal conversation with Aaliyah and the students. It was, a great day for those students because quite often they don't get an opportunity to be in the same space together. Quite often they're in a classroom and they're the only one. So we did that in early November. And then the following week, we had a GSA day. So we brought in students that are part of the, again, secondary GSA groups. And we had about a group of 40 to 50 students that attended as well at the TET Center. And we had a queer musician, Kale Reed, from York University come in and perform for the students. And so they did a performance for about an hour. Then Dr. Lee Ayrton joined them on the stage for an informal sort of panel discussion with 2 students as moderators. And then after lunch, they broke out into different sessions. So we had Two-Spirited Indigenous beading, we had some queer collaging, and then Kale had a group of students that were working on songwriting. So each of the groups had an opportunity to go around to each of the stations. So each group participated in the creation of a song that they performed at the end as well. We also, that same week, had the Black, Indigenous, and Racialized Career Fair. So this is something that was created by a student and who is now a student trustee from Ernestown. Aisha created this event last year. It was a great success, so we did it again this year. More students attended as well. Again, providing that representation that students are saying that they really want to see. So with a career focus. So we've done it so we have different pathway options to them. So we had panelists and different options that were available for college, university pathways, the workplace as well. So we had a panel discussion. So we had a keynote speaker, and then we had a panel discussion, and then we had breakout sessions in the afternoon. So that was, again, well attended, well over 50 students there. And then last year for February for Black History Month, for the first time, we did the LDSB opening ceremonies at LCVI. And what you see there on the image on the screen is the t-shirt designed by students that were available for individuals in the community to purchase as well. And that was well attended, probably well over 100 people at LC. So we're right now planning for the second event in February as well, with the students working alongside with other community partners, including Queen's University. I also oversee a few different affinity groups as well, student affinity groups for Black and racialized students. Each school will have a little bit of a different name, but we probably have, I think, 4 or 5 schools that are actively up and running. They have teachers on site that can help oversee, and I support with a couple of other schools. Ray, back to you, I believe.
On mute. If you are looking for more resources, we do have a human rights, equity, and inclusion page right on our Limestone District School Board webpage. If you go to our board, it's located there, and within that, it will give you some more information, including the link to our student human rights reporting tool and student and family resources as well. Yusuf?
Yes. So I guess now we would like to take any questions. If there are questions, just remember that we would like to ask that the question should refrain from referencing any particular school or staff or student. And if there are specific concerns that you have, you can connect with me after. But we would like to hear from you if you have any questions or comments.
And before we take any questions, I think we agreed to end the recording. At this point? Yeah. I'm not sure who can control that.
I can. Yes. Stop.